I infiltrated a training group for this NoKings protest that's coming up on Saturday. And maybe it wasn't that worthwhile, but let me tell you what I learned. So, the first thing to mention here is that I think you should avoid these areas of potential unrest if at all possible. You know, it gains nothing by being there. You know, it only adds to the conflict or fans the flames. You know, nothing can be gained by being there. So just avoid these areas. If nobody saw their demonstration, they would have no purpose there. They'd just be wasting their energy. So don't go to these places. Maybe do monitor remotely if you're concerned about it at all. I'm personally not concerned, but I am doing this for you guys because a lot of you might live in areas where this could get out of hand. So use these open source tools. OSINT, you know, the word kind of sticks in my throat because I just saw Gruntproof do a video. He just took a massive dump on the terms OSINT and S2 and all that.
OSINT, you know. Why do you know the word OSINT? I'm sorry, but S2 and OSINT and all this bullshit, it's like the tactical fucking homo world. Everybody knows things and everybody is debating shit like little fucking nerds in their chat groups for men, which is pretty fucking feminine.
Kind of feel thrashed about by one of my favorite YouTubers, but it was quite hilarious. I did a whole YouTube video on great open source intelligence tools that are free online. I'll just highlight a few in this video later that might be directly applicable or useful in this situation. You can also do what I did and infiltrate anonymously and remotely. Not really worthwhile, but I did learn a few things kind of interesting. Could even be a little bit risky if you're at all concerned about being found out or doxxed, but I wasn't in the least little bit. So with that, here's my list of items that I took away from this. So this NoKings protest is basically, it's protesting Donald Trump and his lordly kingliness. And, you know, they don't want him to have absolute power. Okay, that's good. I don't want the president to have absolute power either, so that's fine. And they're doing this on his birthday, apparently. I think I heard that was his birthday. And he's also having a military parade that day as well. So there'll be probably a large one in Washington. And here you can see from this map on nokings.org, all of the planned protests. These are all places where people have reached out to them and said, yeah, I want to host. So maybe not all of these will materialize, but probably a lot of them will. So you can find a black dot near your area, and you can find the exact location where they will take place. So let's say, for example, somewhere here in Atlanta, let's say, yeah, it gives you the exact location and time of the planned demonstration or protest. So the ones that are during the day, honestly, they probably won't get violent. 99% of these are not going to be violent in the least little bit. Just throwing that out there. They all have the potential to become violent, but 99% of them aren't. And they mentioned that in their training, that in past events like these, 99% of the time, they are not violent. 1% of the time, they are infiltrated by agitators or hecklers or people that want to turn things physical. I will say they are trying to emphasize this nonviolence. I don't know if at a higher level there's more insidious motives, but at this level it's pretty milquetoast. But sometimes maybe their real intent is implied, such as their instruction to turn off biometric unlock on your phone. They explicitly mentioned that they were worried that law enforcement would force them to unlock their phone. And you can do that with face unlock or with thumbprint unlock. Can't do that with a code.
We really recommend taking biometrics off of your phone when you're out in public. That means you should not have facial recognition or thumbprint opening on your phone. Instead, use a code, because if something were to happen to you, you were lying on the ground, somebody could pick up your phone, the police could open your phone with your biometrics at the very least. And there's lots of other reasons why you might want to make sure you have, particularly if you're going out to a protest, some better controls on your phone. You might turn off your Bluetooth, and really think about putting on a code that is not compellable. So keep your information secure and safe.
So they seem to be pretty aware of the potential of these things and perhaps secretly a little bit gleeful at the thought of things getting out of hand. So I'll just leave it at that. Now, their teams consist at a minimum of an event host, that's the person that reached out to them at NoKings.org to set up an event, a safety lead who is responsible for safety. There will be a police liaison, possibly a media liaison, and then this role called the marshals. And then from this document from, what is this? Beautiful Trouble. This is their training for revolution. This is their source for training and stuff. They have all of these roles potentially, but the ones I mentioned are the main ones. The host, the safety lead, the police liaison, the media liaison, and the marshals. We're going to be talking the most about the marshals because that seems to be a major emphasis of how they conduct their protests and keep things moving along in the direction that they want them to go. And by the way, you can, if, as a host, request to have marshals at your event. So if you haven't trained up enough people for your local event and you want marshals at your event, you can go to this Google form and fill out your information, your event, and how many people you need to assist. So we'll be talking about what these marshals do in a second. But I just think it's funny, they use Google for everything on this. They do Google Forms, they do Google Docs, everything is based in Google. So that shows either a lack of understanding about keeping information private, or a knowledge that Google is so much on their side that they don't have to worry about it. Probably the latter. Now, one thing that really struck me about their training was that this movement is led by women, and it shows. It's very, very feminine. The things they worry about are very feminine. Their solutions to them are very feminine. I'm not trying to be sexist here. It's just a funny observation. There was only one man that spoke in that entire training. He was a former vet of some sort, and it was mainly just a rah-rah, we don't submit to kings in this country kind of a pep talk. And then everything else, all the martial training, it was all done by women. And it's just kind of funny because, when it comes to physical action, I'm just thinking it needs a masculine touch, which was quite absent. So, I don't know. It didn't really put the fear of God in me. So it didn't really make me worried about this weekend. But don't underestimate them. They did this really cringy role play where they had one person pretend to be an agitator or a Trump supporter, a counter-protester, and then how do you deal with them? Or maybe two people from their protest that are disagreeing. How do you handle this disagreement? Oh, let's breathe and let's talk it out. Let's go for a walk. It was funny. And I did troll a little bit, not gonna lie. I put in the chat in upside down text, Epstein didn't kill himself. I also pasted in some ASCII, so anyway, I started blasting, and nobody commented on that. I did ask some questions that were answered, so that was pretty fun. I'll get to that in a second.
Peacekeeper. So that is what the role play is. And Nadine, do you want me to be the counter-protester or the marshal?
I think we don't need to role play. I think they're good. So I think we could press go for 2 minutes.
2 minutes later.
Excellent. All right. So we can, once again, forward the slide deck. We're going to do a quick debrief. Yep, the chat's open, it looks like. So it is great. It's okay to have the chat open, hoping that we can bring it together to think about what you can use when you're actually on the street or out in public, or maybe even with your family members.
So what about their tactics? How do these marshals work? How does their protest work? How does it flow? Who's in charge? What do their roles actually do? Their tactics are fairly anemic in my opinion. It's stuff like, know your ABCDs of crisis management and assess and breathe, choose, de-escalate, and then escalate. They didn't elaborate on that last one. Honestly, it was kind of weird. It's like, okay, you threw that on there, what for? Then they have 6 Ds of de-escalate, and no, it wasn't deny, defend, and depose, but I don't remember what they were. It was more drivel, and actually some of it was kind of interesting. Now the marshals, their job is they're stationed around the perimeter of the protest, and their job is to identify any potential agitators or hecklers or people who shouldn't be there. They are not supposed to interact with police. They're not to touch police stuff or interact with police in any way. And if police are trying to interact with them, they are supposed to direct them to the police liaison. It was a little bit ambiguous how the marshals were supposed to deal with hecklers and counter-protesters, but all of that was all done through roleplay, and it was a little bit bizarre for my brain. So I'm not sure what to tell you there. I'm going to review the video and maybe add some more comments in here. So those 6 Ds were direct intervention, using nonviolent stuff, you know, don't touch police stuff, don't touch angry people, and don't touch weapons. They've mentioned all those things. Delay, wait it out, if that is an option. Distract. Look, a distraction.
Now, whoa, Biff. What's that?
Delegate. Work with somebody else to help diffuse a situation. Put distance between you and the problem. I would call that white space. Document. And that's where you pull your phone out, and that's supposed to de-escalate the situation. They don't have a universal uniform to identify their different roles. That's all up to the host who's organizing the protest to define those things. I know sometimes at some protests they've had the yellow or green helmet people that are there to identify if there's any potential lawsuits. So those are the legal watch people. And they will be documenting everything. That's what all of the protesters and the marshals are there to do. They'll pull out their phone, and everyone has got their phone in front of them. And they're looking for lawsuits, basically. They are documenting everything everyone does. And so, yeah, if you're a law enforcement officer watching this video, just be on your best behavior. They will try and provoke you. They'll be absolute donkeys and try to provoke you in legal ways. They know where that threshold is, where they've crossed a line. But they're trying to provoke a reaction out of you so that they can go after you. They'll record what you did and potentially try and start some lawsuit. One of the questions I asked them was, if we need legal help, who do we reach out to? They directed me to the National Lawyers Guild website, so that's pretty standard, I would say. And if you want more info on their tactics, you can look at their Peacekeeper training workbook. Here's the table of contents of that, kind of give you a flavor for what's contained inside. They did mention what to do if people are open carrying, whether on their own side or counter-protesters. And they gave a totally typical liberal response of basically, if you are a permitted organizer and you have reserved this space, you can define who can enter. So if you want to put up a sign that says no open carrying firearms in this area, then they have to abide by that. And it's like, it felt really naive. So who is funding this? It's the Indivisible organization and also supported by 50501 movement, Public Citizen, Third Act, and some other ones. Just some standard leftist or globalist or anti-American kind of George Soros funded groups, pretty standard. Their focus is going to be on nonviolent sit-ins and demonstrations at like federal buildings, blockades of certain areas. That might be the worst that it gets. Hopefully that's the worst that it gets anyway, beyond rioting. And then risk of arrest when refusing lawful orders to disperse. That's their plan going into this. They're not planning on rioting explicitly. So your action items are, number 1, stay away from these areas if at all possible. If you are within a few miles of a planned protest, make plans to secure your business or your residence, as the case may be, in case things spread into your area. Don't be a target, so remove any political paraphernalia or anything that might put a target on your back. Secure your home. Make sure you have a plan to evacuate if need be. If you're more than a few miles away, make plans to avoid these areas, so be aware of what black dots are in your areas and where they plan to be, and then monitor from a distance to make sure that they aren't spreading or moving towards your area. If obligations force you to travel through any affected areas, create a pace plan for routes and comms, and make sure you have some basic urban survival items for survival. Maybe even an NBC mask in case you're pepperballed or something. IFAC, self-defense tools. Don't go looking for a fight, but it would be good to have some stuff on hand. And then monitor scanner traffic using Broadcastify or a dedicated police scanner. I used to have a police scanner. I don't know what happened to it. I think it broke and I got rid of it. You can also monitor ham bands to see if other people are sharing intel over the air. You can use an SDR for your own SIGINT. Now, I do think that the majority of the comms of the protesters are going to be based off of Signal. They did say that in their training seminar, but they may also be using walkie-talkies. So I'll throw up the frequencies for the 22 FRS channels that you can listen in on just in case. Or they're probably not using ham radio, so you can probably ignore that one. But just pull up an SDR and see if there's any interesting frequencies being used. I know in past protests in other parts of the world, they've used mesh networks to try and get around censorship and firewalls, especially in Hong Kong. So you could check into that, see if people are using that. I don't think they'll need it in the US, but it was just a thought. And lastly, do not fan the flames. We'll end this video where we started. Just if the protests turn into riots, only act to protect your personal property and people. Otherwise, let it burn. It's not your circus, not your monkeys. And don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. So with that, this is Charlie Delta Echo, out.
And let's debrief a little bit. How did that feel for you? Did anyone try or do anything that perhaps felt, or start singing, walk away? We had a few people talk about making jokes. So we're talking about distraction, walking away, creating some space. Some people talking about ignoring.
Some people are giving away cookies. What a great idea.